Hey guys, it's Marco. I know I'm not the voice you are used to hearing on this show to start out your week. Hope you have a great week, by the way. But I made a mistake last week. I numbered the episodes wrong, so it threw off Quinn. He thought that this episode was episode 10. It's actually episode 9. So in a second, he is going to say, "Welcome to episode 10 of Hang 10." Well, that's going to be for next week. Where this is actually 9. Okay? All right. Have a great week. Enjoy the episode. It's a great one.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 10 of Hang 10, 10v10, with your host, Quinn Kalani. Coming to you from the ass end of my quarantine. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Big news this week, and I kind of, I think like a lot of people, I went through a range of emotions. I won't harp too much about it because I think Marco did a fairly good job on closing out the week on last Friday, and you should check that out on our YouTube channel, on Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods, the Closers Podcast. You can get all our stuff. But Kamala Harris was announced as the vice presidential candidate of Joe Biden. And, initially I was very turned off by it, knowing her record as DA and AG. It seems counterintuitive. And to be completely and totally honest, it seems like a completely non-pragmatic move by the Democratic Party. But you know what? It is what it is. You know, that's the revelation I have coming out of it. It is what it is. It's still a shit sandwich. It's just a less soggy one than the one we already have. That's my personal preference. If anything, you can take away from me, or if there's anything I can impart on anybody, it would simply be it should not matter who you vote for. Quite frankly, I don't give a shit who you vote for. As long as you do vote and exercise your civic duty, then it doesn't. I don't give a shit who you vote for. It does not matter to me. Yeah, it's not what your country can do for you. It's what you can do for your country, and that is no better way to exercise that ideology than through voting. So whatever you do, however you feel, I highly encourage you, please get out and vote. But, that's all I want to say about that shit. Moving on. Last night, UFC 252 came and went. It was kind of a lackluster, card as far as star depth, especially considering how the co-main event played out. Sugar Sean O'Malley took on Marlon Chito Vera. Tons of hype behind Sugar Sean. Tons of hype. He got his own 5-minute piece in the build-up, narrated by Stephen A. This guy hasn't up to this point, he had only beaten one ranked opponent, Eddie Wineland. And he was hyped up pretty hard. Now, I'm not saying that it was unwarranted, because without a doubt, the dude has talent, barrels of it. And that fight with Chito Vera, it was more Splenda than Sugar. To be fair, the first round started and Sugar Sean was looking good, strong, heavy kicks. But at some point there was a movement, and his foot just did not pick up off the ground. And it just dragged, and it appeared as if he either hurt his knee or his foot. I don't know. I'm not a medical expert, but I saw someone on Twitter, dangerous, claim that perhaps he took a kick to the peroneal nerve, which is in your calf, on your shin, and it kind of shuts down your foot. gives this thing called dead foot or foot drag, and led to it just completely hindered his movement. Chito Vera was able to close the distance, pressure him against the cage, get a takedown, landed a disgustingly nasty elbow from the guard, and that was it. I believe it was Herb Dean was the ref. He had seen enough. It was clear that Sugar Sean could not fight to his capabilities with that fucked up ankle, blown knee, whatever happened. And he was carted off on a stretcher. I thought to myself, like, holy shit, man. What bad luck. You know, this dude was off to a stellar year so far. And then he gets in there with a real ranked opponent at or near the same level as himself, because I don't believe Eddie Wineland was there. And, man, it came up short. And not in a way that was definitive or decorative, that he got his clock cleaned, but because of an injury. So there's a bit of an asterisk there. And, man, tough outs. Speaking of tough outs, in the main event, Stipe Miocic took on or defended his title against DC Daniel Cormier, the captain of AKA, shout out to NorCal, in the rubber match, which was marketed to decide the greatest heavyweight in MMA history. Now that itself is disputable, especially when you look at the career of one Fedor Emelianenko, the last emperor. But the fight itself was amazing. Eye pokes were disregarded. The fight itself was amazing. Great technical fight. I was very surprised that Daniel Cormier was not able to chain wrestle, or I was surprised by his lack of variety at takedown attempts. He had that high crotch single in the first round, which he landed. Stipe adjusted, and I was surprised that DC did not have another entry point with his wrestling to get that fight to the ground. Whether, it was just a double leg, ankle pick, knee tap. I was just kind of surprised by it. That being said, DC's hands were looking quick. He was landing some great, powerful shots. That second round at the end, when he got dropped by Stipe, I was howling at the moon. Moondog howling at the moon. It was pure, unbridled chaos. And then in the fourth round, DC came back and won, and I thought going into the fifth it was 2-2 apiece, and I can't remember if it was either the fourth round or the fifth round. I think it was the fourth. DC took a freaking 2-knuckle deep eye poke, and it's come out since that it tore his fucking cornea, so he was fighting with one eye in the fifth round. Make of that what you will. I'm not going to sit here and say that if DC had two eyes that he would have won that fight. I felt on the whole, if you were to judge the fight on the whole, DC was losing. I wouldn't say regardless, but the picture was getting clear. Where do they go from here? DC losing by decision. He has elaborated or alluded to the fact that this is it for him, that he's going to ride off into the sunset. Well deserved. DC is a amazing ambassador for MMA, for the UFC. There's really no one better. No one better. There's no one better to have as the face of your sport than a high school wrestling coach, a professional team captain, two-time Olympian, who, mind you, was also the team captain of the Olympic wrestling squad, a family man, a guy who has a clean record as far as competition. There's literally no one better. So thank you, DC. Thank you, Daniel Cormier, for the years of entertainment. You are the fucking man, brother. Salute. To Stipe, badass. What can I say? Badass. Leave it there. But to continue on with last week's trend, top 5 movies. We're keeping the show going. Last week we did sci-fi. This week we're going to do gangster films. The gangster genre. My top 5 gangster movies. 3 of these may be fairly unknown to you, or you may have heard them in passing and haven't checked them out, I highly encourage you to check out all 5 of these films, 2 of which pretty confident you've seen. And if you hadn't seen number 5 and number 1, then you've been living under a rock. But anyway, let's get it started. Coming in at number 5 in my top 5 gangster films that you need to check out is The Departed, directed by Marty Scorsese, starring Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Alec Baldwin, Martin Sheen, amongst others. It is a stellar movie of deception and plot twists, pulling out the rug from each other. As I said last week, this is completely spoiler-free. I don't believe in that. I'm just going to lay it out to you and why you should check it out. That's completely on you. Food for thought, do the dishes. As I once heard someone say in Kentucky, it was a high school sports writer. Food for thought, now do the dishes. Great fucking line. Anyway, number 5, The Departed. Number 4, I'm pretty highly confident that this is a not well-known film, but if you were hanging out with me, Ross Goodacre, Ross Davis, and Ryan Crossett, and Kevin Pierce in 2012, then there's a very good chance you may have seen this film. This film is called Snow on the Bluff, directed by Damon Russell, written by Damon Russell and Curtis Snow. This film is awesome, and it's incredibly gritty. It has almost a like an amateur feel to it, as far as cinematography goes, you know, but it isn't by no means an amateur film. It is exceedingly well done, with a real strong narrative throughout. It centers around a cocaine dealer in Atlanta, named Curtis Snow, who sells drugs to some college students. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been fucking 8 years since I've seen this movie. He sells drugs to some college students, and he ends up, robbing them and stealing a video camera and documenting his life. So it's a day-to-day examination on the life of a cocaine dealer in Atlanta. It's an amazingly gritty film that's just bathing in the realistic style of cinema. Snow on the Bluff, I highly recommend you check it out. Number 3, another film that I'm pretty confident a lot of folks have not seen is The Drop, starring Tom Hardy and James Gandolfini. This film takes place in New York. Go figure. And it was one of the last films that James Gandolfini was featured in. And amazing, stellar performance. A lot of times with gangster movies, one of the tropes, I guess you could say, is family. The relationships between members of that family. Oftentimes, it's between a father and a son, or between brothers. It's a very masculine-driven genre. This film is about 2 brothers, so to speak, James Gandolfini and Tom Hardy. A drop itself, going back to the title of the movie, a drop itself refers to a place where money is, quite literally dropped off for the mob to then come and pick up. So basically, Tom Hardy and James Gandolfini are bank managers for the mob at a bar. Chaos ensues. Supremely well acted movie. One of Tom Hardy's most reserved performances, and also one of his most audibly digestible performances. There's no Bane sneaking in there. No one knew who I was until I put on the mask. Everyone knows who you are, Tom Hardy. You're fucking awesome. And this movie, The Drop, directed by, it's European. There's like those 2 little dots over the E. So maybe it's Mikel. I'll say Michael Roscom. The Drop. Amazing movie. Number 2. This movie is about father and sons. How sons inherit the sins of the father. Road to Perdition, directed by Sam Mendes, the great Sam Mendes. If you are not familiar with Sam Mendes, then you're certainly familiar with his work. Skyfall, that's 007. And last year's Best Picture, 1917, was directed by Sam Mendes. You know, the famous 1917 and the cinematography that went along with that. Road to Perdition is actually based on a graphic novel. It stars Tom Hanks. Shout out to Northern California, Tom Hanks. Shout out to Sac State. Daniel Craig in one of his earlier roles. And Paul Newman in one of his final roles. And I believe Paul Newman was nominated for an Oscar for this. Stellar movie. Jude Law. Jude Law also stars in this movie and plays one of the most horrifying, scary characters, in my opinion, in all of cinema. Beautiful, beautiful film. A patient film. A lot of times with films, you know, things are rushed. You know, you're simply going from point A to point B to point C. You're rushing through the plot. You know, your call to action, crossing the threshold, conflict A, conflict B, resolution, climax, roll credits. Road to Perdition is a patient movie. Everything happens organically. And it is beautifully well shot with the David Fincher color palette thrown on there. It's an awesome fucking movie. I highly encourage it. The number one movie in the gangster genre that I recommend, and it should come to no surprise as anyone, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. It is not the Godfather epic, but Godfather Part 2. Godfather Part 2, again, father and son. But where Godfather Part 2 excels past Godfather 1 for me is the retelling, not the retelling, the telling of Vito Corleone's youth, portrayed brilliantly by Bobby De Niro, you know, taking us back to Sicily, filling in all the gaps. How did we get to Godfather Part 1? Well, it's Godfather Part 2. And where does Godfather Part 1 go after that? Well, it's also Godfather Part 2. Godfather Part 2 may be a perfect sequel. It does exactly what a sequel is supposed to do. It expands the universe, it expands the lore, but it brings the story itself more personal. That is the magic of sequels, when you can expand the world, but bring the story in tighter. The natural juxtaposition of that. That is the brilliance of Godfather Part 2. I'm not going to go into how fucking awesome Al Pacino is. Everybody knows how fucking awesome Al Pacino is. Whoa! Everybody knows how fucking great Al Pacino is. That is my top 5 gangster films that I highly encourage everyone to check out, to go back through them briefly. The Departed, Snow on the Bluff, The Drop, Road to Perdition, Godfather Part 2. I highly encourage you guys check that out. As always, I hope everyone's doing well. Stay safe, stay smart, and God bless. I'm out, and I'll see you guys next week.